Hey, my name is Jay Stevenson. I am excited to talk about consistency today and wanted to give a quick plug to my website, Coach J Running. I coach athletes, walkers, joggers, people trying to lose weight from all over the country. And the main focus that I have, or the philosophy I have as a coach, is I want to help people reach their goals. I don't try to impose my goals on other people, but rather I try to meet people where they're at and help them raise the bar in whatever they're trying to accomplish.
And I'm Dr. Azar-Dickens. We have teamed up together, as we talked about in our last video. I manage a smartphone app called Enforce Health for law enforcement, wellness specific for law enforcement. And we also have a website, and we look at different areas and aspects of wellness. And today we're going to talk about consistency with exercise. Well, one of the problems that a lot of people have is that they have the desire to exercise, they get started, and unfortunately it only lasts, in many cases, a week, sometimes a month, sometimes several months. And we thought we could talk a little bit about how we are able to stay consistent and also give some ideas to you about how you can do that. And so we're going to discuss that in this video today.
So one thing we were talking about before the video started was how consistent we have been over the years. So I've been training for, since like 1996, however long that is, 21 years, and have by and large been running 5 to 6 days a week, in the weight room 2 days a week, for 21 years.
Right.
And one of the things for me that was big part of my consistency early on was I kept a running log. I wrote down everything that I did every day. And I don't do that as much anymore. I probably should, but I'm a little more busy now than when I was younger. But writing down my running log, I did it literally every day for like 15 years. And I can look back at those 15 years and I have a stack of running logs that details everything I did and even life events too. So that was one thing that I did.
Well, and I think the point is that we want to make is that, your interests may not be the same as ours. We have certain goals that we're trying to achieve that may not be consistent with yours. And if your interest is just to get healthy, and you say, I don't want to run marathons, I don't want to train at that level, I don't want to have nutrition coaches and all this other kind of stuff, that's fine. And we're not expecting that or necessarily recommending that because, there's some issues with endurance running that suggest that in some cases it may not be the most healthy way to stay fit long term. But the important thing is if you decide you want to exercise, how do you do it and how do you stay consistent? And I think one of the important things to consider is having a reason to exercise. Not just, my doctor said, or I think it's better for my heart, or I think I want to get healthy. I mean a specific reason. For law enforcement, for example, one of the things we talk about is, the necessity of being physically fit for the job. You're going to come into contact with people who are fit, who are younger in many cases, and you might have to be in a situation where you have to go hands-on with them and to interact with them in that way. Question is, are you healthy? Are you fit to do that? And for your own safety so that you can go home to your family every night. And so that would be a goal, to be fit for the job. Finding a reason to exercise and making it a priority, because if it's not a priority, and you probably agree with this, it's not going to happen. It's not going to stay. You're not going to stay consistent because there's always going to be somebody or something that gets in the way.
One thing kind of along with the priority and then taking it one step further to putting that into action is if there's an event you're excited about, no matter what it is, if it's a walk, a run, one of those obstacle courses, CrossFit, going to the gym, reaching a certain max weight with lifting or whatever it is, if you can find something that you're excited about, I agree, that's what gets me motivated, is I set a goal and then I go after it and I always write it down. And then one thing I've been thinking about recently with being motivated is I've learned to be a little nicer to myself. And what I mean by that is when it's cold, rainy, I don't want to get out of bed, just a little bit of encouragement. Man, if you'll get out the door and do 1 mile, which would be like an eighth of what I had planned, I'm going to count it a success. And what happens every time when I do that, I'm nice to myself. I just warm myself up to the idea. Is I get out the door and I exceed what I thought I was going to do. And then I make it a little bit further, and then I encourage myself a little bit more.
Right.
Instead of kind of that all or nothing attitude.
Right. And the other thing is to understand that nobody's motivated 100% of the time. We might act
Yes,
like we are.
yes,
but
yes.
to be honest with you, there's many days where I get up and I do not want to run. And I have to, what I've trained myself to do, and what I encourage you to think about doing, is to think past that initial fatigue or resistance. At the end of the day, you're tired, you don't want to go exercise, you got a million other things you could do. But to think about how you're going to feel after you exercise, how proud you're going to feel of yourself, and kind of think through that. We run, our group runs at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. I often work at police department till 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired when I get up, but then I think about how great I'm going to feel the rest of the day and how energized and how proud I'll be of having done it. So, keep in mind that nobody is always motivated. It's not humanly possible. You've got to learn to look past that initial resistance.
I've been around so many high-level and some professional athletes that you would think are like gung-ho every second, and you're like, man, I wish I could be like them and get out the door, and I know I could just conquer the world. It's not true. Mm-mm. Like those guys, and when you see whoever you think is the fit guy or fit girl, and you're like, man, I bet it's easy for them. It's still not.
It's not.
They still have to wrestle with that emotional struggle, that mental and physical struggle to get out the door. And when I say being nice to yourself, I think we would be nicer to each other a lot of the times than we are to ourselves.
About exercise.
About exercise. Yeah. We beat ourselves up.
Right.
But I think if you can just get that initial push to kind of be kind to yourself, and you get out the door, you'll end up exceeding your expectations with exercise.
And keep in mind, try to find something you like to do. Don't if you don't like to run, don't run. If you don't like to bike, don't bike. Find something that you enjoy. And we always tell people, think about what you loved doing when you were a kid. Did you love to go out and run around and like to run? Did you prefer riding bikes? Do you like baseball? Do you like basketball? Find something that you're going to enjoy. Mm-hmm. Don't just run because other people talk about it and say that you should do it. If you don't like it, don't run. Find a sport or an activity that you'll enjoy. If you're a Netflix fan and you love to watch Netflix series all day long, get on a treadmill that has some sort of streaming. A lot of treadmills now have streaming capability where you can put your phone in there and watch a 30-minute episode. We're not talking either about going out and becoming a marathon runner. We're talking about really at a minimum, if you look at the research on exercise, if you can get 3 times a week, 30 minutes a session, you're doing really well.
Yeah, and the American Heart Association's recommendation, I think, is like 3 to 5 times a week, 30 minutes a day.
Right.
So, yeah, that's right on. Just get out the door and do something.
And it even can be walking. Walking is a great exercise. But you're looking for minimal amounts of time. It doesn't need to be full force. It can just be those 3 or 4 sessions a week. But the trick is trying to maintain consistency with it, staying with it for a period of long term. And also, as we talked about in, I think, our last video, not going out too hard, too fast. Make sure you exercise at a time that fits your schedule. If you're not a morning person, don't schedule something unrealistically at 5 o'clock. A lot of people say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start getting up at 5 in the morning, and I'm going to exercise before I go to work. Well, if you're not a morning person, the chances are you might do that for a couple weeks, but you're not going to stick with it.
And one more thing with the initial start is the first 2 weeks for me, if I take a break and come back of anything, are terrible. Like, it's hard. So don't judge the success or what you like by the first couple weeks.
Right. Well, it's going to suck when you first. If you've been sitting for a long time, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And your body becomes used to what it's been doing. And if you've been sitting for years and you start moving, your body's going to fight you to sit. And so it's going to be painful, and you're not going to be happy for a while. But eventually, with consistency, you'll get past that, especially with running.
Yeah.
If you just decide that you want to run, keep in mind it's going to take a long time for your body to get adjusted to it. And before you really start to feel good when you're running, it's going to take some time. And even then, if you run all the time, there's some days it just doesn't feel good. There's some runs I go on, you could probably attest to this, where I feel like crap the whole time.
Yeah.
Other runs I feel incredible. I
think the
why.
Good runs where I felt like no pain, I can probably count like in my lifetime on one hand.
Right.
Like every time it was difficult. There's not very many that are just like free flowing and everything goes my way.
Right.
Yeah.
So keep those things in mind. We'll come back to this topic and talk about it again. But that's just some beginning things to think about if you're starting to to wrestle with the idea of becoming fit and maintaining a consistent physical activity, whatever it is that you choose to do. But we'll talk about it again in another episode. We'll get a little bit more specific.